The Galactic Union had long regarded itself as the summit of civilization. Stretching across thousands of star systems, its member species boasted of unmatched technology, harmonious governance, and unquestioned authority over interstellar affairs. To them, war was an artifact of history, a practice left to crude societies. But then it appeared one warship, sliding out of the void of uncharted space, aimed directly at Union territory. It bore no resemblance to anything they knew. Angular. Black as the abyss, broadcasting signals that sent automated warnings screaming across every console. Painted on its hull in stark, unyielding letters was a name, Valkyrie. The first to register it were the scanners on a Zelenary outpost, a distant monitoring post at the far edge of Union space. The Zelenari, a people of scholars and theoreticians, were famed for their capacity to anticipate and neutralize threats before they could ever take shape. Their instruments could spot a comet 50 light-years away, calculate its course, and predict if it would endanger any world. But this vessel, this human warship, reduced their systems to chaos. Sirens howled, AI programs dedicated to risk. Assessment froze mid-process, and automated defenses triggered by default, shutting down every non-essential system as though attack was already imminent. Administrator Relva, seasoned by a lifetime of research missions, stood paralyzed as the readings poured in. The vessel was colossal, twice the length of a Union dreadnought, yet maneuvering with the precision of a fighter craft. More alarming still, its hull was coated with alloys unknown to Union science, scattering or absorbing scans and leaving its true nature a mystery. Armaments. The few readings that slipped through were terrifying energy reserves, exceeding any Union warship classification, kinetic payloads so massive they could tear through planetary shields, and an onboard AI parsing information at a pace beyond the Union's fastest networks. This can't be right, Relva whispered, knuckles white against the console's edge. It must be an error. But it wasn't. When Union High Command received the distress call, panic ignited across hundreds of worlds. Defense. Fleets scrambled, emergency decrees thundered across secure channels, and diplomats flooded the airwaves with frantic pleas. For ages, humanity had existed only as myth savages expelled from the galactic fold, and, according to Union records, annihilated by their own bloodlust. Yet here they were, alive, returning. The Valkyrie drifted through the abyss with dreadful precision. Unlike the Union's graceful vessels guided by automated navigation and delicate gravitic drives, this warship surged forward with raw mechanical ferocity. Each thruster burn rippled space like a hammer strike, the ship itself a brutal monument to a species thought erased. Inside the Zelenary outpost, disorder reigned. Every attempt at hailing the intruder was met with silence. Every sensor sweep collapsed into scrambled, unusable fragments. It was as if the ship allowed itself to be seen, but nothing more. Initiate first contact protocol, Relva snapped. We must know if they come in peace. The comms officer, a young Zelenary named Taz, faltered. Sir, it isn't answering. It just keeps coming, fast. Relva turned to the holo display. The Valkyrie loomed larger now, its jagged silhouette devouring starlight, a demon rising from the dark. And it was far too close, closer. In minutes, the intruder would drift into range of their defense grid, and then, the warship shifted, and what it did next chilled every Zelenary to their core. It slowed, not the wild charge of an attacker, not the limp drift of derelict wreckage. No, this was worse. It was deliberate. Calculating, watching, testing them. Relva's breath snagged. Ready the defense cannons, he ordered, though his voice wavered. The officers around him froze in disbelief. Sir. One whispered. You heard me, Relva snapped, though fear undercut his tone. This ship, this human warship, shouldn't even exist. And yet, it's here. If it refuses response, we must assume hostility. Taz swallowed, pale, and engaged the grid. Across the outpost, massive railguns and plasma batteries came alive, their barrels pivoting toward the advancing vessel. For one heartbeat, their targeting systems locked on. Silence weighed down the command deck. Then the Valkyrie answered. A transmission ancient, encrypted, its code older than Union history itself, forced the station's software into agonizing delays. When at last the algorithms untangled it, words blazed across the central display. The language was archaic, but the meaning unmistakable. Stand down, or be annihilated. The quiet afterward was suffocating. Taz's hands shook on his console. "Sir, that's a threat." "No," Relva whispered, throat dry. "That's a promise." And as if to prove it, the Valkyrie's weapon surged to life. The station's AI instantly compiled an assessment. The figures were obscene. Every gun, from the main cannon to the smallest turret, carried enough destructive power to tear a Union battleship apart. "Adams, this is impossible," one of the officers whispered. "The warship's engine has flared its massive hull shifting ever so slightly like a predator baring its fangs," Sir Taz said in a shaking voice. "If we attack we die." Rialva knew it too, but what haunted him wasn't just the realization that they were outmatched. It was the thought that this wasn't the only human warship out there. This was just the beginning. The tension inside the Zari outpost was suffocating. No one dared to breathe as the Valkyrie hovered just beyond the range of their defense grids. Weapons hot its presence like a blade at their throats. Vuvia's mind raced. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. There were protocols, carefully crafted diplomatic channels the Galactic Union had spent centuries during that misunderstandings never led to war. Both humans didn't seem to care. Aboot Pratols run the message through every translation filter. "We have ordered, we need to make sure we're not misinterpreting it." Taz frantically worked at his console. Seconds later, the screen confirmed the worst message ever verified. "Stand down or be annihilated." The words felt like an execution order. "Sir," one of the tactical officers said, his voice barely above a whisper, "if they fire we won't survive the first volley." Relic clenched his mandibles. That was the horrifying truth. Union warships were built for endurance and not raw power. They were designed to sustain damage where an enemy down negotiath. Valkyrie, on the other hand, was built for something else entirely. It was a killer. "We have to stall," he said. "Open a direct channel." Taz hesitated, but complied a heartbeat later. The transmission request was sent. For several agonizing moments there was no response. Then the screen flickered. To life a human appeared. The Zari had studied images of the lost species spore, but nothing could have prepared them for this. The being before them was massive, broad-shouldered, clad in a dark military uniform, its face partially scarred, its eyes cold and calculating. "This is I, Captain Elias Kane of the Valkyrie," the human said. His voice was deep, firm, carrying the weight of a man who had given orders that ended lives. "Identify yourselves." Rila straightened, trying to steady his nerves. "I am Ad Administrator Elvo of the Zari Outpost, Zon 6 Station. Under the Galactic Union's jurisdiction, you are in restricted space. State your purpose." Kane stared at him, unblinking, gunned. Then he leaned slightly forward and, when he spoke, it was slow, deliberate. "You're wrong." Ova stiffened. "Excuse me, this isn't your space." Kane said it never was. A Shaveran through the control room. Rialva forced himself to remain calm. "Humanity was declared extinct centuries ago. Your presence here is an anomaly, an impossibility. If there are more of your kind, the Union must be informed. We can't establish peace." Kane let out a short, humorless laugh. "Peaceful." His expression darkened. "You declared us extinct, and now you talk about peace." RVA swallowed. He wasn't sure where this was going, but he didn't like it. "You didn't understand what's happening, Administra." C continued. "This isn't first contact. This isn't diplomacy. This isn't a misunderstanding. The Valkyries in Giants Rumbladones. This is a warning." The screens flickered. New data port and signals coming from beyond the system. More ships, more human ships. "An entire fleet. You wanted to forget about us," Kane said, "but we didn't forget about you." The transmission cut out, and then fleet began to arrive. The void off space shimmered as the first of the human warships emerged from the Abyssone after another. They appeared like specters, massive and heavily armored dark holes. Absorbing what little light reached them, the Valkyrie had been terrifying enough, but now dozens of warship loomed on the edges of the system, each one bristling with weaponry that made Union dreadnoughts look obsolete. Panic spread through the outpost. Officers scrambled, reports flooded in, and automated defense systems struggled to calculate odds that now seemed meaningless. VA's hearts pounded as he watched their ratings. This isn't possible. Tash stammered, his fingers trembled over the controls of fleet. This size, the Union would have known. We would have detected them. They've been hiding. RVA murmured, realization dawning like a cold sun. They never went extinct. They've been waiting. Across the room, alarms flared again. A high-priority transmission from Union High Command was coming in. Eva barely hesitated before accepting it. The holographic image of Supreme Strategist Svelf Vice flickered into view, a towering reptilian being whose presence usually inspired reassurance. But not no. Administrator Zali said, his voice tight. We've detected a massive surge off unidentified warships entering your sector. What the hell is going on? Rive swallowed hard. The human strategist silenced. Zale's eyes narrowed. Repeat that they're human, sir. Real Vasse, his mandibles clicking with uneasy, never died out. They've returned and the camp prepared. Zeus's expression dark. How many? RVA looked at the scanner. Readout Hagen, dreading the number. At least 60 capital class warships. So far more incoming, and sir, he hesitated. They're not running standard Union field drives. Their jumps are precise, almost surgical, as if they've mapped the space down to the molecule ZAL. They exhaled sharply. That means they've been observing. A shiver ran through Therum. Then another voice cut in an incoming broadcast, not from the Valkyrie but from the fleet itself. A single coded transmission forced its way onto every active Union channel. A deep, unfamiliar voice spoke. We are the Terran Dominion. You are trespassing in our space for the first time in Galactic Union history. The tables had turned. Rive felt a pit form in his stomach. The humans weren't asking for recognition. They were claiming what was once theirs. Their's gaze turned hard. Administratoristan, care carefully. You cannot let him advance beyond that sector. The Union will no tolerate. But Rila was no longer listening, because at that very moment, largest human warship yet arrived, a behemoth easily the size of a Union command station. The scanners barely had time to register its sheer scale before its name appeared in bold crims and letters across its hull. HSS Retribution, a name that carried only one meaning: vengeance. And then the countdown to work through Libigan. The arrival of the HSS Retribution sent a wave of terror through the Zanari outpost. Every scanner, every automated fence system, every AI aboard the station screamed in protest at the sheer magnitude of the warship now looming before them. It wasn't just large, it was colossal, a fortress in space, built for the sole purpose of war. RVA could barely tear his eyes away from the readings. The ship's energy output rivaled that of Asmal Star. Its weapon systems were layered in redundancies so thick that even if half of them failed, it would still outgun the entire Union fleet in the sector. This isn't just a warship, he whispered. It's a statement. The command room was silent save for the rhythmic beeping of alerts flooding the system. Then the Retribution spoke. A new transmission came through, overriding Union protocols with almost surgical precision. No encryption, no elaborate decryption needed, just a raw filtered signal blasting across all frequencies. A new human face appeared on the main screen. This one was older, harder. His uniform was black with a silver emblem over his chest, a symbol unknown to the Galactic Union. Budin mistakenly Tyrann. His eyes were thicker of cold steel, his face marked with lines that spoke of a lifetime of war. I am Grand Admiral Nathaniel Graves of the Terran Dominion. His voice was deep, authoritative, carrying the weight of Aemon, who had commanded fleets. Anshadardines, you have one chance to surrender this sector and withdraw from Terran space. RVA felt his throat go dry. This is Union territory, has been for centuries. Graves didn't so much as blink. That's what you thought. The word shit like a hammer was his hands clenched. You eradicated us, Graves. Cut him off, his voice steady but filled with asimering rage. Or so you believed, your historian's route. The truth your leaders told the galaxy, that humanity was too violent to serve, that we destroyed ourselves. He leaned in closer and forth first. Time RVA felt something he had never expected to feel from a species long. Declared extant through it. But here's the reality. Graves contend we didn't die. We didn't fade into history. We endured, we rebuilt in dark beyond your borders, waiting, watching. His lips curled slightly, and nowhere back a cold sweat formed on Reva's brow, forced himself to stand straighter. If you attack a Union station, it will be considered an act of war. Graves' expression didn't change. You think this isn't already war, eh? Silence thicker than the void itself fell over the command center then. Graves delivered the final blow. We know what you... That he said. His voice was quieter now, but infinitely more dangerous. The forced sterilization purges, the orbital bombings. The Union didn't let us die out. You exterminated us. Realva flinched. The truth was supposed to be buried, even among the highest-ranking officials in the Union. The details were classified beyond top secrets. Humanity's extinction wasn't a natural event. It had been a campaign, a systematic eraser of an entire species deemed too dangerous for the balance of the galaxy. Somehow, against all odds, the humans had served, and now they had returned for retribution. Graves tilted his head slightly. So tell me, Administrator, after everything your people did, why should we show you mercy? The question hung in the air, like a guillotine blade waiting to drop in for the first time in his career. Administrator Relva had no answer. The silence in the control room was absolute. No one moved, no one breathed. The weight of the moment was crushing, and for the first time in his life, Administrator Rive felt something alien, something utterly unnatural. For it wasn't the kind of fear that came from facing an unknown threat. Nothing was different. This was the fear of consequences. The Galactic Union had spent centuries covering up the truth, convincing themselves that humanity was a necessary sacrifice, that their destruction had ensured peace. But the humans hadn't been destroyed. They hadn't been forgotten. They had been waiting, and now the Terran Dominion stood at their doorstep, demanding justice. Relva swallowed hard, forcing him to the meat. Admiral Gravis gaze, if you attack this station, the Union will respond. Our fleets will come. You may win this battle, but you cannot defeat the entire Union. Graves wasn't moved. Is that what you tell yourselves? Your fleets will protect you, that your treaties and alliances will save. He leaned forward slightly. You misunderstand the situation, Administrator. This isn't a negotiation. This isn't diplomacy. You're not dealing with a minor rebellion or an upstart species trying to claim territory. High size were like cold iron. You're dealing with U.S. A new alert flashed across the Zari command console. Taz let out a strangled gasp. Sir, I don't understand. Human ships. They're moving information, but our systems can't track their exact positioning. Riva's head snapped toward the display. It was true. The Valkyrie and the surrounding warships were executing maneuvers so precise that Union targeting algorithms were struggling to process them. Even the most advanced Union fleets relied on predictive models to anticipate movement. But the humans, they were moving outside the models. Riva's breath itched. They know our targeting limitations. Graves gave him a knowing look. Haurilla whispered, though he already knew the answer. The humans had studied them. They had learned everything, every tactic, every formation, every weakness, and now they were exploiting it. Graves's expression remained unreadably, but there was something calculate behind his gaze. He wasn't eager for war, but he wasn't afraid of it either. The Dominion had prepared for this moment for centuries. Vaya's claws dug into his disc. He had one chance to avoid a massacre. Admiral, he said carefully. You say this isn't a negotiation, but war will only lead to more destruction. Waiter happened in the past weekend. Graves cut him off. There is no we. His voice was ice. There is us, and you Theons who survived, and the ones who tried to erase the station. Trembled as their attribution activated its primary weapons, not firing, just charging, a warning, a reminder of the power it held. Graves leaned in, his expression unreadable. You have one last chance, Administrator. Order your forces to retreat. Leave this sector. Never return. Rilla knew he was out of options. His forces were hopelessly outmatched. The Union fleet was days away at best. And the humans had made their stance perfectly clear. If they refused, there will be nothing left of Zen 6. His voice vaso when he finally spoke. Stand down. A hushed murmur spread throughout the command center. Taz looked at them in shock. Sir, that's an order. Ralph exhaled sharply. Send the withdrawal command to all personnel. We leaving. A flicker of something unreadable passed over Graves's face. Respect, contempt. It was impossible to say wise choice. The Admiral said. The screen flickered off, and just like that, Valkyrie and the Retribution held their fire. The Znari fleet disengaged. The station systems powered down one by one. RVA sat heavily in his chair, feared of the moment pressing down on him. The humans had won, and deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The withdrawal was slow, methodical. The Zari outpost, powered down in essential systems, recalled its patrol units and transmitted the evacuation order to all personnel. No one dared to question if sheer presence of the human fleet was enough to ensure that no one made any reckless decisions from his common station. Realva watched as the Valkyrie and the Retribution remained motionless there, weapons primed but silent. They weren't celebrating, they weren't gloating, they were simply waiting. Tesh hesitated at his station. Sir, Webandoning, a classified research facility. This sector contains decades of Union intelligence data. If the humans take it, they already know everything. Grelva Moore murmured, his voice hollow. They knew about us before we even knew they existed. WH